Hello, my name is Jonah Brucker-Cohen, and this is a talk about some projects of mine related to the topic of human error. This is from June 15th, 2023. So, how integrating common errors into interfaces can change design thinking. So, I want to start off with critical context. So, this is a simple text message between yourself and dad. Message comes in a meeting, in a meeting, in a meeting, in a meeting, so on. And the response comes back, are you in a meeting? No, why? So this is the kind of mistakes that happen a lot with people who send text messages that are inadvertent or they come through as pocket calls or just mistakes in general. And we get a lot of these daily. So it's interesting to think about how these errors are there, why they keep occurring, and what we could actually do to create new objects and processes from them. So I wanted to start off with a quote from Ellen Rose, who wrote the book User Error Resisting Computer Culture Between the Lines back in 2003. She says features such as auto-summarize, which rob the user of motive power, to word processors that automatically make typed addresses hot, to programs that force the user to confirm the deletion of a file 3 times, to dialog boxes that offer only the option of agreement. User-friendly interfaces are not designed so much to make computing easier, but rather to make it foolproof and dumbed down for error-prone users. So we're seeing basically a way of the software itself is compensating for our abilities and things we can't do. So I'm interested in using those mistakes to kind of look at how we could create new interfaces and new types of devices we interact with. So she says the human presence is reduced to a twitching finger, spastic body, and saturated informational pump, which makes choices within program limits, and we're stuck within these limits. Human error is this is a picture of a typical keyboard that someone's spilled coffee on. We do this a lot. Overall, the term started back in the early to late 80s by James Reason, who was a professor at the University of Cambridge, and he published a book in 1990 called Human Error, the first edition. And he categorized human error in two different distinctions. The first is the person approach. The person approach examines errors of individuals in areas of deficit, such as forgetfulness, carelessness, and negligence. And he also has the systemic approach, which means it blames human error more on organizations and things that happen within larger structures that are difficult to master and for an individual to control. So those happen typically on the large level, from governments to institutions to universities, even companies. And the person approach happens, very specific to the person. So in my research, I've been definitely interested in the person approach, and I'll talk about some work that looks at that. So the first one I made is called Letter Dialer. It's from 2020, and it looks at rethinking standardized UI. So it's an iPhone app that removes the numbers from the dialing app and forces you to dial only with letters. So you actually have to remember which letters correspond to which numbers, and hopefully not make any errors when you're dialing the numbers. So this um, basically highlights errors that we incur on digital devices. It emphasizes the defects. It creates a new interface that exposes the things that we get wrong. And it also instigates our continued reliance on software that compensates for our abilities, right? So a lot of people actually use the letters as a way of forgetting what numbers, or using numbers to call, but then you are inundated by companies trying to get you to call with letters combinations that spell words, and a lot of the time that confuses people. So here's a quick video that I made for this project. So the next project in the series is called Dim, and it's a Mac OS app that will dim your display to 50% every 5 minutes. That forces you to change the display brightness by hitting the button on your keyboard. So it highlights a correctable error that we both experience and tolerate and have become an everyday part of our computing life. It also examines the things we do wrong with technology, just like most of these projects do, and looks at that kind of ability to change it. After that, I worked on a hardware project in this series called PaperJam, and this is a printer that has been modified to continually cause a paper jam. So if you look at recycling levels in the U.S., they're only about 21.4%. So that would mean there's enough office paper discarded every year to build a 12-foot wall from Seattle to New York annually, which is a huge amount of paper wasted. And this highlights the environmental impact of 10,000 sheets of office paper wasted annually. So here's a quick video about this project. So moving on from there, I worked on a project also in this series called Password. And so this is a field that when you type in your password, it will automatically change your password back to the word password. And so this forces you to use insecure passwords all the time as a way of showing you the errors that happen. So if you look at this fact it critically examines the fact that about 72% of people reuse passwords for their personal accounts, and this online error happens constantly, but it's definitely avoidable, and it's also continually replicated no matter what. So people will seem to do that despite the fact that they should not do that. Moving on from there, does error equal intention? So this is a picture of a boat, and look at the way that the words are placed. So it says no safety, smoking first, although it's supposed to read no smoking, safety first. So does that mean that the person who put this down was intended to make that error, or is that error something that we see more commonly? So James Reason, who wrote this book, quote from him, he says, error is intimately bound up with the notion of intention. So the term error can only be meaningfully applied to planned actions that fail to achieve their desired consequences without the intervention of some chance of unforeseeable agency. Two error types are identified: slips and lapses, where the actions do not go according to plan, and mistakes, where the plan itself is inadequate to achieve its objectives. So abbreviating into discommunication. So another one in the series is called autocorrect, and it's basically a autocorrect engine that I created that will change your typed words into sort of leet speak or shortened speak. It uses wrongly used abbreviations into these messages. So whether we choose to or not, our text is changed, highlighted, or modified, whether we turn it off or not. And it adds this element of leet speak into the text, creating this sort of abbreviated conversation. So no matter what you do, your text will shift and change to the current shortened version of that, which we typically see on Twitter or in text messages. Also looking at hardware with phones, this is looking at error-prone hardware. In the series, Human Error No Signal is a software instigator for screens. So it's a monitor that will change its source to no signal no matter what source you put it on. This emphasizes the common error of people navigating sort of these non-standardized array of monitor and television firmware interfaces. All of these devices do not have anything that's standardized, so it's always different depending on what brand you buy. So this shows you that most people get this error continuously when they can't figure out where the signal's coming from. So here's a video about this. The next project is called Theft ID, and it's looking at the web's dark side. So this is a form that was created to only allow you to input information that will cause theft ID or identity theft. And so in 2021, there was a new victim of identity theft every 2 seconds, and about 118.6 million people had their records exposed in data breaches, with consumers losing more than 56 billion in identity theft and fraud. Now that's a lot of money lost, and so this relies on human error or the ability of individuals to determine whether or not they should give up too much of their personal information. It asks you things like your first and last name, your address, your mother's maiden name, your bank account number, any other kind of personal data, your social security number, and things like that would cause identity theft. So the entire form is just made for that. Also in this, the world happens by mistake, often in your pocket. And how many times have we gotten calls from people when they didn't mean to call us, and we just call them butt dials because there actually is nobody on the other line, but we just hear the sound. So looking at this is a project called Pocket Dial. It's an app, and it says a phone application that automatically calls a random person in its contact list when it senses low light levels. So as it kind of notices that it's in a pocket, it will start to look through your address book and send a random call to them. And then in 2015, I noticed there was a study found that 1 in every 5 calls to EMS, such as 911, were butt dials, right? So these like crazy, the fact that we actually caused them. So here's a video that we made about this project. So moving on from there, I made a project called Camera Face in the series. And this is a camera that uses AI to detect when nobody is looking at it, and it will only take a photo when nobody is actually staring at it. So ultimately, it's a camera that only takes bad pictures. And that uses a particular form of AI, face detection. So in a study conducted in 2020 by Western Digital with about 2,000 Americans, it was found that about 41% of those interviewed had actually avoided deleting photos on their device. Also looking at accidental emails. So this is an email client that I made that looks, it's called CC Roulette. So it's an email client that forces you to CC an unintended recipient when writing an email. It'll kind of cycle through your address book and force you to add someone that the email was not intended to be added to. There's a video of this. So some more hardware and software in the human error series. Software, one of them is called Mal, and it's a software bot that clicks only on suspicious email links, such as Trojan horses, malware, suspicious links like Amazon Corp. Caps Lock is a software agent that will change all text communication to all caps, no matter what. So when you're sending an email, you can't send it in lowercase. More software in the series. Demandware is a website that demands ransomware. So it shows you once you pay it that it is only ransomware behind the ransomware. So it's double ransomware. Auto delete is a software agent that deletes text from writing applications. So when you start writing, it'll start deleting. This is an example of that. Another piece of software in this series is Spam Mailer, which is an email client that will turn every outgoing email you send into spam, no matter what it is, by adding images and links and things to it as you go. Hardware in the human error series. Crowded strip is a power strip I made that has too many plug spaces, so that when you try to plug in plugs, you can't fit anything. Right click is a mouse that only clicks right, forcing you to never be able to click on anything, only at menus. And off switch is a power switch that can only turn the device off, meaning that you can never turn anything on, which is also an error that happens a lot. So how to subvert the human-machine context. Here's an overview of some of the projects. I like this example of a keyboard waffle iron, even though necessarily never used this, but it's pretty funny. So Supplant interactive context. So deconstruct network and human machine interfaces to provoke new relationships. That has to do with the fact that once you change an interface, it really modifies the way we perceive it, and then also how you can actually implement it is a whole new challenge in that area. Challenge this UI itself, so regain your abilities back from digital tools. You know, a lot of this stuff that we do these days is automated, so how do we actually get our abilities back? And perhaps by adding error into those interfaces, we can actually get those things back. When you emphasize human computer frailty and you expose the way that we misuse hardware, software, and networks, that will kind of allow us to subvert and change this context that we talk about daily and the way that we use machines in general. And how do you integrate error as a reward? So that's another issue that happens with this. So provoke errors to understand, to emphasize understanding. So thanks for that. And there's a lot more projects and things like that on my website, coinoperator.com. Signing off.